I'm really glad that we could get Cazú and Frane here to give a lecture to us. Cazú Zegers is an architect. Cazú describes her way or her approach to architecture is exploring the way of inhabit the territory, and her work calls for a way of inhabiting the territory as precarious and light as possible, using a highly experiential low architecture that gently contributes to the landscape. Cazú is credited from the world-renowned Escuela de la Valparaíso. I hope I pronounced that correctly. A school of architecture. Okay. And she works, she declares that an intimate relationship between poetry and architecture is important for her work, and that results in the development of a new Latino language, one that is in dialogue with the global paradigms. Frane is also educated as an architect and did a master in timber construction. Frane is professor at the Faculty of Architecture, Urbanism and Geography of the University of Concepcion. He is director of Polo Madera, a timber construction program at the University of Concepcion. He's supporting the development of timber nationally and internationally, and he's a member of the executive committee of Chilean National Timber Council. So, and now I would like you to, and I'm looking forward to your lecture. The lecture will be shared, as said, as already discussed, from between Cazú and Frane.
Okay, yeah. I'll start. So, okay. So, first, yes, I'm the director of Polo Madera. Polo Madera is a program from the University of Concepcion, and I deal with the faculties of architecture, engineering, forestry. We also have a technical education center and an intermediate level between that and the university. So we have almost the whole chain, and we are trying to work together to improve the added value of timber products. So mostly with construction, but not only that. And to start, I want to give a certain perspective about that question that Cazú asked. So is timber the material of the future? And to me, and this is a very personal point of view, I think you have to understand that question, you have to first analyze performance and context. And that is in more detail. If you analyze performance of architecture, you would have some characteristics that you're looking for in the design. So in indoor conditions, the cost, the security, the aesthetics, the structure. And there's also a context that in which you have to apply those performance criteria. So there's a workforce that you need to understand in order to see if that is feasible. A budget, a raw material, the technology, the politics, the time, and that is all the part of the concept of the context that and designed, and the project is something that needs to be able to deal with both at the same time. So there are some sort of internal forces and external forces that deal with the project. And that context is shifting in time. So it's not as easy as just staying still. You need to always analyze what is happening in terms of the performance criteria and the context criteria to be able to achieve a project that is feasible. And of course, you can find many aspects that are today influencing the architecture project, but I think arguably the most important ones today are sustainability and technology. So two strong forces that are shaping how we deal with the project. And so sustainability is understood as something that needs to take care of social, environmental, and economical aspects at the same time. And so if we were to analyze construction today by sustainability standards, and if we draw some sort of target, well, construction is not even hitting the target. It's not sustainable by any measure. Whatever you want to choose as a measure of sustainability, construction right now is in a big, big trouble. Just a few facts about construction. That this would take a longer presentation, but maybe a few facts. 34% of all garbage that is generated in the world is from construction. Just construction alone is more polluting than mining. Buildings are responsible for 39% of CO2 that is emitted to the air. We are far more responsible for what is happening than transportation or other industries. And of course, you can apply that to safety, to whatever you want to choose as a measure of sustainability. Construction does not hit the target. And this may be because of this picture. On top, you have manufacturing and how it has evolved in the last, 60, 70 years. And also how communications have evolved in the same amount of time. But then you look at construction, timber construction, and it hasn't evolved much. We are mostly doing what we were doing hundreds of years ago. So there's a lot to change, and we need to be aware of what is happening, because it is starting to shift now. So the other question, so is timber sustainable? Does it have an hypothesis of sustainability if we were to build mold with timber? And of course, you have to compare it with other structural materials, so steel and concrete. And in every single aspect, wood design is better than steel or concrete. In air pollution, solid waste, resource uses, energy, whatever measure you want to put it in, timber construction is far less pollutant and sustainable than concrete or steel. That may be due to the fact that it's lighter, so it's easier to transport, easier to machine. But also because it has a strength to weight ratio that is really, really interesting. It's far better than concrete. And it's very similar to steel, and depending on the type of the kind of strength that you're requiring and the type of timber, you can achieve something similar to steel. What is the technological context in which we are moving? So, and in the end is to know if timber is compatible with that. When you look at the technological context, you will find a description that it involves industrial revolutions. So maybe you've heard of it or not, but we are in the midst of the fourth revolution, the fourth industrial revolution. So the first one was steam, the second one was electricity, then electronics, and then we are now in cyber physical systems. So a part is cyber, a part is physical, and then you get all this mixture. And it's interesting. I think it's something very relevant to architecture. Maybe one extreme example is this news that I don't know if it will prosper, but Amazon is trying to think about prefabricating homes in order to build and sell Alexa. Why not? If the cyber physical systems are integrated, then there's a physical domain in which we move that can be conquered by somebody that is not related to construction. Why not? But I think for us, in terms of architecture, there's another classification of revolutions, of understanding of how this is, of how technology is progressing, that is maybe more intuitive, and it is about the manufacturing revolutions. So at first we have nothing. There's just our hands, and that will shape that technology. It is a technology in some sort. It will shape how we do architecture. What kind of architecture can we do? So this is one, for instance. Then you have the first manufacturing revolution, and that is we build a tool. And with that tool, with that diversity of tools that you can think of, we can produce different results. So now it's not just the hand. Now we have something that can shape and affect the material, and it has progressed into some absolutely advanced and awesome tools like these ones that are available and constructed and being designed today with the most advanced machining processes and digital design and whatever you want to include in that. But it still is just the fact that you are replacing the hand. So there's something very manual about it, and that will somehow limit the kind of architecture that you will be able to do. So if you only have that, if you only have a hand tool, then you will be able to do some sort of technology of architecture like this one. Of course, it can be more sophisticated than that, but the idea is that you need something else in order to progress, to understand how architecture has evolved into what it is today. So the second manufacturing revolution comes first with steam, and then it comes with oil, and then it comes with electricity, but it's always the same. So now it's not the hand it's not just the hand that it's not doing the work. You have a tool, but also the power now is external. And so when you have an external source of power, that can be electricity, oil, or steam, then you can process a lot more, a lot cheaper, a lot better, actually. And that kind of technology explains this kind of architecture. So this wouldn't be possible without an external power source. You can lift more also, and so it changes a lot. Then you have the third manufacturing revolution, CNC. So now the position is controlled by a computer, 2-axis CNC, 3-axis CNC, or even this one is a 5-axis CNC, 150 meters long. This is a 6-axis CNC, then 7-axis, and you can add whatever you want. You can do all sorts of configurations. This is what is present at the ETH in Zurich. And just to understand the system, you have different parts of CNC. You have one that is a locator, so this will find any point, or actually an effector in space, and then you have an actuator that can do whatever you want. So you can put in the end of it as an end effector, you can put whatever you want. It doesn't really matter. You see this in the most advanced timber companies like Zublin, Merck. You will find this kind of robot processing and dealing with timber. You can put a chainsaw, or you can put somebody to make a robo coaster like this one. It doesn't matter. There's a very vast use of this technology to be able to influence matter, and then you can create a different kind of architecture, because now it's not just the hand, it's not just the power, but now it's our locomotion system that can be replaced by something external to us. And you can produce this kind of architecture. So this is actually very coherent with the technology that is at hand today. In some places in the world, of course, this is not really global. And you can see that this kind of architecture is really what expresses or deals with the most advanced technology available today. And these are different examples of very visible complexity, because you just see the different shapes and you can understand that it is something different. But actually, that kind of technology is also what enables, for instance, this kind of architecture. So 10 stories, 14 stories, 18 stories in timber are not really possible without CNC, without that precision of machining under the millimeter. And then you have the fourth manufacturing revolution. And the most important part in this fourth revolution is that arrow back, going back. So it's just not just the computer sending information, but also receiving. Because you can sense now the world around that machine. You can sense temperature, you can sense location, pressure, or sound, or light, or whatever you want. So you can sense and send information back and feed that loop. And so the machine can adapt to whatever environment it is affecting. And so that explains, for instance, this kind of experiments in which the machine is capable of understanding how or where to put that amount of stones in order to build a column out of loose material. Or this kind of example in which the machine needs to understand, it's not just about precision, it needs to understand force. How much force do I need to apply? Not just where I need to be. It's a different concept. And it needs also to assess the precision of the material, because those tiles are not really precise, not as precise as the robot. So it needs to understand the material and the context. And you can pour a beer, or you can do something like this, which wouldn't be possible without a force feedback. So the machine knows how much force to apply. So the second time it goes around, it does this, it applies the same pressure. It's not just repeating in the void the same place that it was shaping before. It's really a different kind of technology. And in some way, this is also what was applied here in this case in the A&A in London at Hope Park, where they monitored, or they scanned hundreds of trees, 167 trees, and they obtained a curve on the axis of the tree, because those trees were growing on a hillside and they were bent. And so they have these profiles and they know the geometry they want to achieve, and they can now feed the geometry they want to do with different sizes of trees, and the algorithm will find the best match to that curve, and it will store it, and it will continue trying all the different trees that need in the end to be cut to achieve that shape. So you will only go and cut the trees that you need for that kind of specific curve that you're designing. So there's a loop. It's not just that I am designing some shape. There's information that is coming back, and I'm scanning the trees, and of course the process is so far really slow, but there's that loop, and that's part of the fourth revolution, in which our senses are being replaced by external sensors. And it's hard to understand what kind of architecture comes out of it, because we see different shapes, but we don't see the process that is involved in it. And I think maybe one of the most advanced or interesting examples is what is happening in the construction industry with companies like Catera that is in the US. And they are understanding the construction as you would understand a car. And actually they're coming from Silicon Valley, and they're applying that vertical integration in the construction sector that is actually dealing with the complexity of the system in a much more efficient way, because they're aligning all the interests of the developers, architects, contractors, everybody, the engineers, the subcontractors, the suppliers, everyone is integrated in one chain. And so you just skip the complexity of all the different interests of all the parts that are trying to pull the construction towards their own goals, making the whole process very inefficient. And that is only possible because there is a technology platform that aligns everything. So that is a very like hidden consequence of this kind of fourth revolution, that you can deal with complexity in a way that it wasn't before. You can have a platform in which you can design the building on the right or the building on the left and have the prefabrication done in a matter of a couple of months, and you have a quotation in a week. And even if the designs seem or look very different, it's really the same thing, and the manufacturing process can adapt to that. And this availability now of these are all our tools, the tools that we have today. So we need to understand what we want to do with it. We want to do a repetition, or we want to achieve a diversity, or even better, we can now understand that the client is a very unique person. So at least one problem we have here in Chile is that the construction industry deals a lot with a repetition of very huge amount of houses all the same, and how we can use technology to diversify, to understand that the client is somebody that needs to be taken care individually is quite a challenge, but it starts to be possible. So it's moving away from Henry Ford, in which you have only one variation, and you move to something like the Fiat 500. You can find it in 500,000 combinations. And so this is not industrialized architecture anymore. It's not about that. We moved away from it. We are much more than 100 years away from Henry Ford, and architecture is still looking like this here. So that's not really possible. That's not industrialized architecture. So when the possibilities are really seemingly endless, how you design for diversity, how do you design in this context that we are right now? So sadly, it's no longer possible to design by hand. Of course, you can have your sketch, and you need to have your sketchbook on your desk, but that's not possible by hand. It's not possible by CAD. It's not possible to deal with that complexity with a huge amount of people designing a lot of pieces, all with their own mind and complexity. You need to program. If you want to harness the power, the computational power that is present today in your desktop, then you need to program. That probably today is some sort of graphical language like Grasshopper. And you need to understand how to communicate with engineers, with fabricators, and how you can translate that data. And you need to be proficient in that kind of teams. And you will move traditional construction to an industrial construction. It's not that it takes a shorter amount of time, but you can do changes when they really are easy to change. You change in the design phase, not in the construction phase, as it was before. So you need to understand that 2D drawings are okay. It's a way of representation, but it's not a way to work anymore. You need to move to a detailed 3D model in order to improve construction. Construction is really, really bad. That 3D model will have everything detailed, and you will need to, in order to improve construction, somebody, I don't know who will be in a workflow that you will find in the United States, but somebody will have to take care of the detailing. That's the most important part, at least to me. I think that is when you will condensate everything from the looks and the aesthetics that you want, the cost, the manufacturing, the building and the use of the building, and then the end of life of the building. Everything comes down to that detail. So if you allow it, then the detail will provide a decent work for that building, so that it can function. So if that is the context, is timber really ready for that advanced manufacturing? So of course we have the highest end of technology, and timber seems a material that is really old. So we need to understand this question or to answer it. We have three basic kinds of manufacturing technologies. So you have additive technologies. You've heard of 3D printing and that sort of stuff. Well, timber has also had an additive capacity for a long time. We can add different pieces and make a bigger piece that is even better than the smaller parts. You can also have formative manufacturing, which means that you can bend it. So you can do different kinds of shapes. And you can have subtractive manufacturing, and you can mill it to a precision that no other material can. So under half of a millimeter, I don't know how long is that in inches, but it's really, really precise. And there's no way you can do that with concrete or with steel. With steel you can, but then you have thermal expansion that really is a mess. And why timber? Well, because of this, you can work with it. It's really easy to, it is really strong, but then you can machine it really easily. And since it's that soft, you can have very big machines like this one, 2.5 meters long, and the spindle that is spinning at maybe 15,000 RPM, and it should induce a lot of vibration. But since wood is soft, you can get away with it. You can have that kind of manufacturing flexibility with timber that you couldn't have with steel. Here is an example of what is a 5-axis milling machine for a small piece of steel. You see that how robust it needs to be in order to have that level of precision. In timber, it's not really that. It's much easier. And so, yes, robots love timber. It's really compatible. It's the best material for it. And you can do whatever you want with it. You can do whatever shapes you want. You have shells, or you have some sort of ribs, or this was planar structures. You can have grid shells. You can have whatever spatial structures. You can have reciprocating or lamella structures. You can have even solid ones like these that are really sculpted into timber. And again, not just the shiny part of strange and curvy shapes, but also that kind of precision and machining and lightness can allow for this. This is 7 p.m. one day, 7 a.m. sorry. So this is 7 a.m. in the morning. And this is 8 p.m. the same day. Of course, the other examples are shiny, but I think this one is very interesting. Good luck doing that with any other material and reducing risks and weight and cost. So in conclusion, to finish my part, so timber is actually very compatible with technology, but also with the world, with what we need as a response to a sustainable construction. Of course, we need to understand much more than when we usually do in architecture. We need to understand the material, the construction processes, a little bit of engineering, and then you can do amazing stuff. You need to understand how to collaborate and to integrate today to deal with that kind of information and how to be compatible with what is needed for a complex solution to a complex problem. Gracias. That one I didn't translate. I think you're going to understand.
Very good. Thank you, Frane, so much. Okay, so as Frane was saying, is timber the steel of the 21st century? That's the big question for us. And I think that after Frane's presentation, we have some ideas to this, no? But then Alex de Risque, which is an English architect, he said that timber is the new concrete. And he has this really interesting posture that he says that the 7th century was the era of the stone, the 18th century was the peak of bricks, and then the 19th century was the century of iron, and the 20th century was the concrete, and the 21st century will be the time for timber. And the reason for that is because Frane was saying is all these environmental things. And this is another exploration that Michael Green, who with Equilibrium Consulting and Metzawood, they explore if the big buildings of the 19th century could have been done in another material, because each material has its architects, icon architecture, no? So because of that, it's really interesting to have these super interesting buildings like the Empire State, as if it could have been done in wood or in timber, and it was really interesting that it can be done. So he makes all this exploration, and it's really fascinating that we can make this icon in other materials as timber. That in our minds, we would think that was really impossible. And then I met this architect. He's Andrew Bow. He's also an English architect, and he has been working with timber for a long time. And I met him 2018 in Brazil, that we were in a conference for timber, from building with timber. So I learned a lot from him. And he says timber is the future, as everybody. And he has this project that's called Multiply, and that was a competition for the Victoria Albert Museum. And it's beautiful to see this timber piece in this really traditional architecture. And he's explaining about these possibilities that the timber gives, that the main ambition of the project is the policy debate about environmental challenges that can be addressed through innovative and affordable construction. And we're in the time of great crisis, both of terms of housing and CO2 emissions. And we believe that building will, with a versatile and sustainable materials such as the American tulip wood, constitutes an important contribution to solving these problems. So this is like Andrew Bau's position, and it's something that we are trying to put on top of this discussion today. And he made this the tallest building in London, the 209, and he won the Riva Prize for that. And it's completely structured in timber, and then it has another cover on outside, because the CLT, how we use it is to make all the structural parts, and then you can cover with whatever you want. Of course, you can cover with timber too, but you can't put CLT on to put it to the environment directly, because it doesn't work like that. Then he's working on this on the first really tall building in London, which is already getting there, and you can see the way that it's built. It's really fast, and it is still very interesting shape. And his house, where he made a really interesting, challenging to the structural capabilities of the material by making that space for work, which was in a double space and with no beams. He explains better than me, but the interesting thing is that when you want to investigate with a material, then you start pulling the limits to new solutions. And that's what I think it's really interesting. And it is what we have been doing with Thorsten for this competition, that we hope that we're going to win. I think that we should. So you see this double space, which is open and doesn't have any beam, and the building is really beautiful. It's his house. On the top is houses, and on the bottom there is little stores on one of the channels in London. And there is Andrew Bau when I met him in Brazil, and then we work in a competition all together. There is Frane too. There is Francesca, which is an Italian architect that works with us, and also a German architect. So we were a multidisciplinary, multi-nations team. And this was our project, which was really beautiful. It was a whole timber project for a new timber headquarters, and all these roofs were for walking on top of them, and they were connecting with the hills around, and we really made an open plaza for the community, and then all the spaces for working were with a green, and it was like a very discrete project. It was very interesting to do this. And then what happens with Latin America was our question. We are still in Latin America in a very initial stage of this. And we are, with Frane, we're trying to pull these limits towards a new dimension. He's making the first tall building in Chile, which has been a very, very big challenge, because we are, as countries that we're overdeveloped, we have to be very creative, as what Andrew Bau was proposing, like to use high technology, but in a very low tech way, no? So that has been all our challenge, and that is what we were working with Thorsten, how we do all this really high standard technology in a low cost, because if we can be in low cost, then we won't be able to build the thing. So it's a big challenge for us, but it is a challenge that makes you be more creative. So for us in Latin America, the territory, this is something that I said in my first international lecture, 2003, I think, yes. And this was for the centenary of Gaudí. And I said that the territory is to America as the monuments are for Europe. Like what I'm trying to say is that people come to America to see this beautiful landscape, and all the task of working in Latin America is how we build and develop without demystifying the territory and this landscape that is really amazing. So it's all about the forest and the experience of being immersed in this natural environment in balance with the unique ecosystem and its endemic wealth of high scenic beauty. So this experience is really like a mystic experience. Being in a native forest that we have all these cold jungle in the south part of Chile with really interesting types of timber that are very good for building, is something that brings also like culture for us. So the thing is that we have been doing a lot of work in timber with pine and with exotic species that are making also a lot of environmental chaos and problems. So what I'm trying to put on top of the table is what happens if this sculpture, like this is a French sculpture, was a building made in native timber. Like if we can do this high standard timber, structural timber, but in a very low tech and with native timber, but that we use the forest not erasing the forest, but how do you say in English? Mauricio, cosechar, harvest, but harvesting the forest. So I think that I'm behind this type of positions, like how we can syncretize these local techniques and process buildings as a way of a Latin American way that is dealing with landscape and architecture. So working in Chile, that is this telluric and southern country with a timber vocation. And you can see that because, as I showed you before, all this cold jungle that we have with this really excellent timber and that's beautiful wood. It's a very hard wood, and we have really interesting pieces for that. And what happened is like these churches that were done in a place called Chiloé. This was done from Jesuit monks that came with the conquerors to evangelizar. Sorry, I'm going to say it in Spanish. I can't say it thank you. Evangelize the people, the indigenous people, local people, and what they found. And they brought all these churches from Europe that they were made in stone or marble. And what they found was this native handcraft, as Frane was showing at the beginning, that was the hand and the axe, and the timber, the local timber. So they built the stone church in timber, and today this is a cultural patrimony for the world, declared by UNESCO. So when you connect local materials with local hand in a new way, like bringing technology from another way, but using the local ways, you create culture and you create appropriation for a space. So that's what I have been doing in architecture, I think. And I start with vernacular carpentry as like the person with the hand and an axe. And my creative way of working, as Thorsten said at the beginning, is that I work from the poetic word, because poesis in Greek or in Latin means to come from the not being to the being. What I want to say with this is that when you name the things, you give them being. No? It is something that can evolve in space. So what I do is that I cross territory with the poetic word, and then that brings like a little gesture that is like an embryo of a shape that will evolve in the space. And this method that I call it like it is comes from a gesture, a figure, and a form, which is like a process of how form and figures, how an idea that comes from a word. So the word would be the first matter for the space, for shaping the space, becomes a built construction. And because I do this over the territory, because always the place where I build gives some guiding to name the thing. And that's that drawing on the top where you see this square that is like a diamond square, and then all those curves is how much you can see. And of course, you can't see in 360 unless you turn on, but what you can see in a frontal way. So I call that a position in the space, and I call that the rhombus square, which is like the way that you measure with the territory. And from there, all this way of doing, I call it geopoetics. So in this way, you can build new narratives over a territory. I want to start with this family lot, which it was designed in 1995. And I like to show this because a family lot, it's like a small hotel for a family, but it has all the same way of doing. And I did this in the south part of Chile, in a very remote place. And I decided to go round because of the poetic word, which was fire. And fire because the place where I put this house was built, the presence of volcanic explosions were very recent. So I thought that the fire was very present there. And also I thought like a family lot, the first order was the clan over the fire. So I thought that the family over the fire, and then the house came because of this relation. But I'm always interested in architecture that's not gravitational, but that is dynamic. So I thought about studying the spiral galaxy, that is the drawing of the gesture on the top, and then that figure, and then it came the form. And it's really interesting because if you can see all these studies of the spiral galaxy, there is little galaxies there. That is the way that the nursery of galaxies starts. So I did this project in 1995. It was finished, the construction in 97. And I just made an upgrade about like in this same way. And what is interesting of this project is that when because of the poetic word, I have to do this house really round, completely round. And everybody in Chile was telling me it is impossible to do timber that make it curve because all this native timber is very, very strong. So that is impossible. And I thought that, sorry, that's my dog. I thought that when you have an idea, you can always make the things go forward. So that's what happened with this house. And you can see the floor plans. This was designed before computers. So it was done everything by hand, which was a big challenge. And I did tons of models to understand, because it's also in the place where it's built, it's not flat, but it has a slope. So it was really complex to put this shape in the slope with all this complexity of the poetic word that was bringing here. And then in the center you have like the fireplace for the family, and the first wind you have all the couples rooms that they can go in individual or through the common space. And on the left wing you have like what was called the children's house. So there are two houses articulated by this center. And the way that we built it was with this very precarious and uncommon way in light timber structure. And what was really interesting was that I was trying to find how to put the stone for the wall, for the concrete wall that was the support of all this. And when we were making the hole for putting the basis, we found a lot of volcanic stone right there. So that was like the comproval of all my hypotheses with the poetic word. And here is where you have this articulation of the two winds. I call this the wind or the wave that is connecting both spaces. And you can see the entrance of the second house. Also, it's a covered place to put wood and everything for the use of the house. And I also always love stairs as sculpture. So it's always an opportunity of do a sculpture in the house. That was a stair that was built in Santiago. It is laminated. And it was done completely and went in one piece to the place. And as I said, it is like in a really remote place with a really bad road. So what they did, using all this creativity, was to put this long stair in a truck with pneumaticos. How do you say that?
Pneumatics or
pneumatics? Yes. So it
tubes?
didn't. Yes, so it didn't break. So it is a lot of these little stories, no? Then this is the entrance, and this is the central part. The also interesting thing about this architecture is that you can go only one family alone and just use the center and not have to open all the lot if you want to have a control space. This is the place of the fires. And then the stairs that are connecting all these, the parts over the center. And then the windows on the roof that brings light in the interior spaces and also give you these dimensions of the vertical. And of course, this is the garbage truck in the morning. So you have this very contemporary architecture in contrast of very vertical way of living in the space. And this is like the new version of this project that I did all these terraces and second layer of using the space. And on the right hand, you have the new galaxy coming out, and it is a fireplace for the family again. So because the family grow a lot, so they needed a bigger space to be. So this is the place today, now on the right, on the left hand, is the place where everybody is meeting and gathering. So the house it is an old house, really, got really contemporary just by adding this new space. And timber has almost 25 years, no more. 255, it's a lot more. And here you have the round cylinder from outside that is the connection, and it is also a bathroom inside. That's the entrance. And here's like the new kitchen for the space. The afternoon. And from here, I go to another part in the south part where is Mapuche community. It is the local indigenous is very present. In general, I start this presentation with Mapuche singing, but because of time, I will skip that. But I had to develop like a big urban planning space under the Villarrica volcano. And I remember about this phrase of Nietzsche that says, place your tents under the volcano, which I think is very beautiful because it is speaking about just build and don't concern about the future, because of course you can see from this satellite picture that the place where we are working, it is where the volcanic explosions go down. So of course it's a big problem. So because of that, And the name of the place is called Cahuelluco, which means Cahuello is a horse in Mapudungun, and Co is water. So it is water for horse, and all the development was done through the water and the horses. So that's why the name of the place is called Cahuelluco. But we also name it in the indigenous way, that they said that always the place where you're going to build a new community speaks about the way the community will be. And on that time, a beautiful white horse came out of the water. So, of course, this image is the image of the project. And what I really wanted to do was, and the big challenge here was, how did I make of this place, which is 1,000 hectares, it's really big, a place and not a vacation resort. And what I did was to work with this ecosystem engineer, that he made a baseline of the place, and also because we needed to protect all the volcanic events and to grow the community where there was not going to be a problem. And because of that, we lived 600 hectares on the right as a private park, because we have this rainforest, Valdivian rainforest ecosystem, which was really very interesting, very unique, because the people that had this land before, he cut all the trees that he could cut. So, and he didn't cut these ones because they were on big rocks and stones. So we lived this like this park for the community. And then I minimized the car roads and just make trails for going in horse, by walking, or in bicycle. And also the houses, they were not limited by fences, but by also trails. So you can go through this place that is very near a very important city, but you feel that you're really in the deep, deep south, which is amazing. So all these little blue dots is all scenic views that you can see that articulate all this system. And of course, I have to work like all the this is the Portes Lodge. And this was just an encounter of roads, but because I made that really simple structure there, I made the entrance and I gave the place the shape. And it's inspired in the eye of the Portes Lodge, who is coming to the place. And it's just this wall that is ascending towards the sky, and it is connected in two parts, this is the eye of the Portes Lodge. And then it was this typical barn. We have German colonies in the south part of Chile that they were called by the government in the 19th century to open and to colonize these lands. And they brought all this way of doing carpentry from Germany. They were really very beautiful and good carpenters, and they teach the local people. So there is a very iconic construction in the south. There is all these barns. So we used this barn. I decided to leave it just as it was, and made like a space for receiving the people that came to buy. And because I didn't want to over design, I just left the clean structure and made the space work to receive people. Like on the second floor, we put all these beds in an open space, which is a very indigenous way of sharing. It is called the big house or the firehouse. It's not really fire, but it's something like Firehouse. It is a place where the community gathers and shares. And all this experience of the barn made the people that came here be invited to the place to live this experience. Because what happens when you don't over design is that when you have a beautiful table, but it's not completely set up, but the setting is a beautiful food, a delicious food, and the person is in front of you. So you have to cut all your barriers, and you just have to talk and encounter to the other one. So all the speaking that was that happened in this place was what made the place to be, and to develop also the architecture. So today, this Firehouse, it is the place for the community and to do the sport. We climb the volcanoes around the space. This is us going Mochochoshuenco, which is what I was saying, this beautiful country that we have. So this experience of the Fogón and the Casa Fogón also was what gave the architecture, as I was saying. So I developed like 3 types of architecture. One is the galoft, which is the encounter of the galpon, which is the American barn, and the loft, the American loft too. So it's a way of how you organize the program of the house in open spaces, and in this like vernacular contemporary architecture. And then also I made these conqueror units, which is not a house, it's not a tent, it's not a house, it is something in between. It is like the minimum space to conquer a place. So these conquer units that are done in just one architecture gesture, and in very low budget, but in a high quality experience of the space. I will show, I think I have 2 of these, and this is the barn house, but this is a contemporary barn that Philippe Jodido chose as the first runaway in his last publication, Latin American Living. And it's just this like fuselage of timber in middle of the forest. And it's inspired on this, when you draw a house when you're a children, it's just this synthetic space that is like this tent that is protecting you. And I made this wall, which makes the entrance, also controls the climate, because you have these 2 doors, and then you go into this open space. On the top, you have the balcony for the family. And also like my original idea was that this solar protection would also be the fence for closing the house. This is the main room, and the way that the house is in the forest, and very simple movements, like you articulate on one edge and go in with the wall for 1 meter, and then you have a lot of quality in the facade. Then was these ateliers houses. This was for a Chilean painter that he lived in France, and he wanted to paint, made big size paintings. So he needed a special light that came from the south, which also was the volcano view. So that was perfect. And he asked me for a cube 9 by 9, which I suspended in 40 centimeters, and I opened like the edges to make the light come in. And this simple cube, it has 9 by 9 by 9 meters. I moved the wall like 2 meters, so you can have the stairs for the balconies where you have the place for the living. And sometimes you have the cube as an atelier, and other times was the space for the family. So on the right hand, you have the kitchen and the table, and the volcano on the front. And also this is an interesting picture, because these are the balconies for sleeping and with the bathrooms. And you can see a very complex space, but it's really simple. So I like this idea of in a very like elemental movements. You can have so much beautiful experience in the space. And here one of the lights in the roof is also the place where you take the water out of the roof. But because I did it with glass, it gave also a lot of how do you say in English? quality to the space. And then I call it the shell house, which is inspired just in this, like a very, like the shell of an apple. Like you peel an apple and it's what it is left. And the beauty of this is the tension between the landscape. Are the hills that are made by the volcanic explosions of the volcano, and that's where the park is. That's why they couldn't cut all the trees. And this simple horizontal line that tensions the space, so you can see the landscape tensions the house, and the house tensions the landscape. And this wall, it is vanishing over the ends, because I have the light coming from the facade that you go in. So, but I didn't want to cut that facade. So I just made a very simple movement that was vanish towards the end and have the light inside. Again, this strategy of the wall, making the entrance and protecting from the rain. And this is like the system that is a 2-1 by pulgadas. How do you say pulgadas?
Inches.
Inches, thank you, I'm sorry. And it's just this little piece of wood that is connecting with the timber in 1 meter. And then you have like the continuity of the wall. And in the inside, you have this really qualified light. I like you to see the floor plan, which is very simple. Now you have all this common space. On the right, you have the main room, and on the other hand, you have, on the left hand, you have the 2 rooms and a bathroom. This is 100 square meters. It's very small, but it's completely good for a family to be in the space. And also the roof as terraces. And then you have the space, and the chimney, you can use a cover from one side or the other side. When there is only 1 person or 2 persons in the house, the chimney is open completely, and then you can, if you want some privacy, you close it. And there is the way that how it vanished the wall towards the end, and all these little creations of the pillars with the glass inside. So everything is speaking about this lightness of the timber. And I did the same floor plan, but in a rectangular house. And it is completely different, the space, just because it's called house T1A. That means that the roof is in one way, no? But it's also, it is suspended on one edge, and then it goes angostándose, como, how do you say angostándose? How would you say that?
Not stretching, but compressing.
Compressing, yes, towards the end. So because of that, you can have all this movement in the space. So you have like this volume that is like floating. And I show all this so you can understand that when the chance of the big scale project came, that was the Tierra Patagonia Hotel, I could do this because I have been doing all that in all that work. So this is a place amazing in the south part of Chile, which is called Torres del Paine. And it is in front of this lake, which is called Lago Sarmiento. And when I was asked for making this project, I went to the place. And my first thinking was, how do I put a building here without spoiling this place? Because I had to make a hotel. In the beginning was like 8,000 square meters, like for an 18 rooms hotel, or 80 keys, you say in English, no? Hotel. And then I'm glad that it was only 40, because 80 was too much for the space. Anyway, I saw that, and I saw all that little topography on the other shore, that you can see that are like little dunes, and those dunes are formed by the strong wind that comes in from the glacier in season. So I thought that the hotel was going to be one of those dunes, no? So it was be completely topographic, not to interfere with this beauty, but still that it was there. So I made like this fuselage that comes out from the earth and folds in itself, and because it does that, also it is giving like a front to the wind. And what I imagine for the hotel, because people comes here to go to do all these trekkings and to visit this beautiful place, so they are in general like in the morning and in the evening. So I thought that the hotel was the heart of a big man like floating over this space, and the heart was the hotel. So the hotel has to be a very thin shell that you could always be in the environment but protected. So that was like the big challenge, how to make this fuselage that you can also like be sharing the space in connection, not disconnected. So there is the drawing of this man over the territory, or this territorial man. And then of course, and there is the idea of the wind coming and bumping onto the building and jumping back. So when you went in the wind season, you could go in not flying away. And the poetic name of the hotel is the Hotel of the Wind, of course. And the other idea was, I said, yeah, what is the postcard? And the postcard was like this fossil that was like over the shore of like Sarmiento's Lake. But this hotel couldn't be built and resolved if we didn't design it with parametric design, as was how Frane was saying. Like I made, and in the very beginning of my career, I did a roof with no parametric, and it didn't work, I have to say. And now with and if we haven't had parametric design, I think that it would have been impossible to do this shape really. So it was solved in a high-tech drawing, but in a low-tech solution. Like all the work is bringing all these beams on top, and each one is done by hand, one by one in the place. And these beams is what give all the space the shape. And then you can see the building sitting there over the shore. And it's almost camouflage with the space. The other important thing we did is that when we're making the buildings, we took all this vegetation that takes a long time to grow and put it in a green garden for all the construction time. And then when it was ready, we planted back. So the building is completely settled into the landscape. And also those opens are windows that are connecting the circulations with the outside. This is the facade to the lake, the different hours of the day. It is a really beautiful landscape, and the skies are all the time changing. And then you can see the building coming from the inside to the outside, dialoguing with the Torres del Paine massive. And for me, this is like a love affair between architecture and nature, like the way that they melt in and they fold and they dialogue. It's amazing, really. So I will just show this in a very fast way. And using timber again in all the ways that you can imagine. We use lenga for this. That was a local timber from there, used by a forest that it's harvest and not cut, no? And we use like some traditional techniques of the way of resolving the facades. And the roof is done with this 2x1 inches timber. That's the entrance. And this is the connection to the common space. This is during the morning. And this is in the afternoon, looking towards the entrance and the reception. And also this connection, I made these canoes of the indigenous, or original indigenous of the place, that they were called the Kaweskars, the place of the fire. And this space that is really like being in the belly of a whale. It's some experience to be here. There's in the morning when the people is taking breakfast, and the other one is in the evening when they come back and they have dinner and a nice drink in the bar. And then this is the place where all the excursions are planned every day, and that's a map done by an artist, but it's the map of the place. And everything is speaking about the same, no? Architecture, decoration, all the materials. It is speaking about this Patagonian space. This is like a little library and a place for reading that is a little more silent than the other common space. And it is a two-story building, and this is the corridors that they are connecting the spa area from the common area, and then you have these 42 rooms in between, and these bridges are the entrances to the rooms. And we use all these walls to make these artistic boxes to tell the story of the development of the Patagonia. These are the rooms. They are almost the same. They all have the same view, and the only decoration or is the view in itself. That's the painting of the place and the materials of the place. And then also I did the same size of bathroom as the room, because I thought if you are all the day out in the, sometimes the climate is not so good, you want to come back and to step on a nice floor and take a nice hot bath and be able to look outside. So you have that window over there, and then you have the shower and the toilet. Also, all the furniture was done in the place. And then you go to the spa area, and the water that is connecting with the water of the Sarmiento Lake. And for closing this, I also think that structure is part of the architecture. So I always like to show the structure as it is. So I left the roof not covering it, but showing the way that it's built. And then I moved to another new paradigm, like changing this vernacular way. This is Santiago. And I made like my mother's house here, which is called the Emerald House. And I made it in really not all in timber. But again, as with Casa del Fuego, I'm still breaking paradigms, because everybody says that a timber house in Santiago is not good because we have a very dry climate. And even the neighbor of my mother, this is like in a nice neighborhood, and he said, but you're bringing the neighborhood down because you're making a timber house. Why you're doing that? No, he couldn't understand the architecture in timber. And I think that that's the challenge for timber as the material of the 21st century, to break this idea that timber is like precarious, or that precarious is bad, no, that it's poor. But I really think that precarious is virtuous, and this is the way that we are showing and working with that. So the Emerald House is because of the color of my mom, and I work with this Roman floor plan with this yard that is giving in the center, that is giving light and air to the space. And the beauty of this, like it is in a really beautiful place. So I wanted to have all the view in the 360 degrees. So I didn't go with any wall towards the window, but you have only sliding doors. This makes the space very interesting, because instead of have partitions, you have areas, and you can, because the way that you close or open the doors, you can have very different ways of using the same space, which is very interesting. And what I did was to study all the way that the emerald crystal, it is grows in platonic forms. And we got into the icosahedron, and because we got into the icosahedron, we thought that the yard had to move towards contemporary. So here is the yard that is moving towards contemporary from this regular basis of the Roman floor plan, and also volumetrized. And this is the roof of the house. And from here you have like all the space. And also because we are in a slope, I put all the house in these concrete columns. So you have a lot of space under the house, like a Mediterranean or intermediate space, which is very good because we are a lot of people in our family. So my mother can live alone, but also we can go all together, like 42 people at the same time, because we have all this space to expand. And this is the construction process. That is concrete, the base, then we have steel, we have all the materials. And then we have this cover, this timber cover. This is Santiago, and we have this amazing landscape with the Andes on front. This is the concrete coming out, and the space underneath the house. And then the emerald coming out. And how this, it is still, even that it's a very urban house, is dialoguing with the landscape. And that's the twisted yard, that is like a fifth facade. That's my daughter showing her grandmother house. And she was also on the horse. And that's a way to understand the time of the projects. This is the two yards, no, the rotated one and the Roman one. Again, the stairs as the sculpture for the architecture, and the concrete beams, and the space underneath. And it's really a beautiful house. And which is really amazing is that my mother decided to build this house when she was 78. So somebody told me that old people they don't feel very comfortable when they move too much. So how I did this house, measuring all the furnitures and the way that she was living and making her relations in space, and brought it to the house. And also the house she lived in an apartment before, that it wasn't a first floor, but it was an apartment. So also this thing about putting the house on top of this concrete, it is like an apartment, but it's also the green part down. And then I'm all the time inventing interiors like this glass pressed glass with an artist work that is part of the room, but still is not like a formal room. The kitchen connecting to all the space, and the living area that is connecting with all the landscape. The entrance, again looking towards the other end, and the way that you enter. And this is the roof, and a little video to show what happens with the space. And for finishing, I'm going to show one last project that is in the region of the rivers. And no, it's two more projects. And this one is another family lot that is in the south. And here I thought about the water and how I could make a cover for the water and protect from the water. So we studied the water molecule to make the house, but it's also like this tent that is inspiring this, no? Like everybody makes a little tent with a pole and just a plastic cover. So our plastic cover was this steel oxidized piece that was done in the place with carpentry done one by one. And also we work with recycled native timber, because there have been demolishing a lot of these traditional German houses. So we are recycling in a way of connecting to our ancestor and to our culture. So this house, it is working these diagonals, and this timber, that is several type of timbers from the recycle, it is in the same line of the external shell. So it brings a really interesting space and really interesting quality to the space. This is like the main area where it is dialoguing with this amazing space. Here again, learning from my mother's house, the underneath and all this family gathering and this common space. And these two wings were again the two generations conviven. And the other important thing is that I don't like too much doors, as you can see. So the doors become the walls, and you only use the place to open the door. You can see where the door is. But what it is interesting of this is that you have these planes or these diagonals that are really giving shape to the architecture. All the windows and everything was done in the place by beautiful handcraftsmen. Amazing. Again, this idea of putting the bathroom inside with these printed glasses. Here is with a forest, so you bring the outside to the inside. So then you don't know what the limit from the outside and the inside is. Another room. And the space for the family, like it's very concentrated. And everything is in pastorals, because there is one of the person of the family that can walk very well. So it should be accessible in every part. So accessibility was used also like an opportunity to do action, no? The underneath, and in the evening. And the last one, and this is from where we started, and it's what Andrew Bow with the different English architects, and what Frane was saying is that the twin crises of climate breakdown and biodiversity loss are the most serious issues of our time. Building and construction plays a major part, accounting for nearly 40% of energy related to carbon dioxide emissions, whilst also having a significant impact in our natural habitats. For everybody working in the construction industry, meeting the needs of our society without breaching the Earth's ecological boundaries will demand a paradigm shift in our behavior. And this is architectures declare. So we are, how do you say in English? I don't know how to say it well. We are using this. We don't want to. We want to be sustainable, so we are going completely into timber, and so we did this house in the south that I'm going to go very fast. The concept is about fire again, but also about the stone pirita, and it's again a family lot, and it is designed through like the sacred geometry of fire. And how the crystal of pirita or pirita, I don't know if you say like that in English, it is grow, and all the crystal system. And here comes this house that is very similar as the one that I showed, but has the challenge that is the site. It has precipicio. How do you say precipicio in English?
Like a ravine? Or
Like it is, but it's not a ravine, but like a ravine of 12-meter height. So we have to hang the house on these 12 meters. So I decided that I want to make it in CLT, because I thought that it was going to be the best way to do it. This is not the structure of the CLT. And we did it, and then we made all the development with the climate and the way, because it is really a bad site. It is a beautiful site, but it's bad with lighting, with air, with wind conditions, and because we don't have any flat part, but we have 12 cliff. We have 12 meters of a cliff. So, and we're hanging this project over the cliff. So it is a super big challenge. So the geometry starts with these studies of the fire and the sacred geometry. So all the stairs are in the middle, connecting with all the parts of the house. And there is the house. The thing is that for doing it CLT, we couldn't do all these big windows. So we have to go back again and do it in a little more conventional timber work. But the next one, we are doing it in CLT, absolutely. So we are learning, no? Of course, this couldn't be hanging as this. We have to put some pillars. And then studying the inside, like if you want, like this is the space with exotic timber like pine, or this is like with the native. So understanding how we want the space. And we're also building this timber house in a very deep part in the south that you get there after 1.5 hours of boat, and it's really super remote. So the architecture here, the challenge is how you make this enterprise to be able to build this in these conditions. So CLT and timber is the way to go. So thank you very much for listening to me and my bad English. I'm sorry. and all the technology thing. Okay.
Thank you, Cazú, and Frane. Thank you very much. Great. So I really enjoyed the talk, and I don't know where to start. I think we are slightly over time, but I would like to say some words about, and maybe also give opportunity to raise questions. So I really liked you could feel your enthusiasm to timber as a material and how to use it to create habitats for human beings. And I think, this kind of field in between technology and poetry and nature and artificial habitats we have to build, that's very interesting, and we can see the complexity of all those aspects. But I like that you especially like Frane talked about the technology which is on hand now, which we should use, and I think will use, especially for timber structures, which kind of reinforce development again for using timber in a very efficient way. At the same time, like I could see in Cazú's design, that she would accept the imperfections of timber, which is a natural material, and would also use as an architectural feature. Yeah, you can touch timber. That's what I really like with your approach. So I have a lot of notes here when I try to collect what I want to say. So, and also I wanted for our students this is a structures class. So I think there was a lot about architecture, a lot about structure, a lot about technology, and your idea of saying, do not over design things, leave space for developments in architecture. That as an engineer, I find that very interesting, so that you would intentionally leave the space for developments in architecture when the users would take over, so to say, and then enrich maybe the architecture, which you probably could not imagine or could design for. So I found that very interesting. Yeah, thank you very much, Frane and Cazú, and thank you to students. I see we have the class since this now the 5th hour something. So thank you for everybody who joined us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Thorsten, for the invitation. We were really happy to share ideas and to share. So,
Yes.
and thank you everybody for listening to us.